This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to DBR Bites, episode number 32. It is Wednesday, January 31st. We are at the end of January. It feels like it's already been a year, but it's only January, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Donald Wine, for this episode, but I have a guy with me who's back from the land of penguins and polar bears. Jason Evans has returned.
No polar bears. Polar bears are up north, penguins are down south. All those movies, commercials, and stuff where they're penguins and polar bears together, the two shall never meet. They don't know what each other is.
Jason, I was going to ask you. You could have done this in the National Geographic portion of this DBR Bites, but Jason Evans is back, ladies and gentlemen. That's the most important thing. I don't see any penguins with him. I guess I won't see any polar bears since he didn't encounter them. But no. Jason, how was the trip?
Oh my God, man, it was incredible. This was perspective altering. That's what I've been saying to people. Like literally my view of the world and what it looks like and what it is at least a little bit transformed because of all the stuff I saw. I went there. I'm a person who I love animals. I'm big on animals. I've been to Galapagos. I've been to Africa. They're like the other things on my bucket list are things like I want to go see the polar bears in the Arctic. I absolutely want to go to Madagascar to see the lemurs. Shout out Duke Lemur Center. I'd love it. Can you arrange that for me, Duke Lemur Center? I really want to go both to Australia to see the kangaroos and the koalas and the such, and scuba at the Great Barrier Reef. And then the number one thing on my bucket list was to see the mountain gorillas in Rwanda. And the number two thing was to go see penguins in Antarctica. So I've checked number 2 off the list now. All that said, about me and the animals, Donald, the most impressive thing, the most amazing thing was the ice. It was the landscapes. It was the way it looks down there. It literally looked like something out of a film, like a Marvel movie or something like that. Like, oh, we're going to take you to the ice
Yeah,
planet.
It looked like some of the pictures that you posted looked like movie sets.
Yeah, it looks like you're going to some other world. And if someone said to you, no, this is still Earth, this is Antarctica, you would say, if you saw it in a movie, you would say, you know what? The digital artists, those CGI guys, they overdid it. It can't really look like that. They made it look unrealistic. That's how cool it is. It looks unrealistic. It was amazing. And I would think about the fact, I would look at these unbelievable icebergs these gigantic glaciers that are quite literally carving mountains out of the earth. And I would think about the fact that the ice that formed them was made back when mankind was just monkeys and we weren't even walking upright yet. Like the icebergs that are floating around that broke off from the glaciers, you don't measure them in hundreds or even thousands of years old. It's tens of thousands, perhaps even more than that, years old. And to think about the blink of an eye, not even the blink of an eye that all of us are on this planet compared to the things I was seeing and experiencing. Like I said, Donald, it's perspective altering. And all that said, the animals were pretty cool too. The penguins were amazing. The penguins.
I will say I've seen penguins. I've seen penguins in Australia, which were it's bleeping awesome. Like there's just no way to describe it. It's just they're just so awesome. So I've seen them there. I've been to see kangaroos and koalas and been to the Barrier Reef. So I have that on you, but I obviously have a few questions about this trip for you. First of all, where did you leave out of? Because I know there's a couple places. I know there's one place in Argentina that apparently is beautiful that a lot of people leave out of. Is that where you left out of for your trip?
Yes. Just so everyone knows. So the way we did this trip was we flew from Atlanta to Buenos Aires in Argentina. We overnighted in Buenos Aires in a very, very nice hotel. And then the next morning we took a charter flight to Ushuaia. Ushuaia is the city in Argentina. It's down there in Tierra del Fuego, very close to Patagonia. And it's literally billed as, the city at the bottom of the world, the end of the world, I think they call it down there in Ushuaia. I'm not 100% certain of this. I think it is sort of the last, I wouldn't call it a major city. It's like 50 to 80,000 people or so, but it's sort of the last city, the most southernmost city on the planet. And that's where you leave from. It takes you about 2 days on a cruise ship to get from Ushuaia down to the Antarctic Peninsula, sort of past the South Shetland Islands into Antarctica. We traveled below the Antarctic Circle. There's a very specific longitude and latitude that you have to reach to be actually in Antarctica. And it was truly remarkable. Donald, I know you're going to ask me about the Drake Passage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. I had to ask because we've talked, we keep talking about it on this show that you're navigating those waters. People don't understand it. I've never been it. I've only, watched a lot of videos on it. But I also know a couple people now. You are the second person I know that has gone to the Drake Passage. And the Drake Passage is notorious because for a lot of people who don't know the geography south of there, there's nothing to stop the tide. Like there's no body, there's no landmass that low that can stop the tide. So the tide just runs unchecked for a lot of the year. How was it down there for you? I know there's times where it is calm and there's some times where it's so bad that they won't even let you go. You obviously went, so it wasn't that bad, but how did it go? Yeah,
so they refer to it either as the Drake Lake or the Drake Shake. And our first day, we got the Drake Shake, my friend.
Yeah.
We were getting about 16 to 20 foot waves. The ship was tossed about a lot. And I am very, very fortunate, Donald. I have a strong stomach. I'm one of these people who just doesn't get motion sick or seasick. So I took no drugs at all. Drugs are your friend, but I didn't even bother to consult my friend. I took no drugs at all and I was perfectly fine. My wife was not so lucky. The good Miss Evans, Kathy Evans, was taking some fairly powerful medicine and it did nothing to help her. The first night when we were getting those 20-foot swells, she spent a portion of the evening praying to the porcelain god, if you catch my drift.
So yeah. It's interesting. I've been on a lot of cruises. I've actually been on a cruise that kind of went through a hurricane. Not something you recommend doing, but it's something that happened. And the ship was tossing and turning. I've only been seasick one time in my life, and that was actually going to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. It's the only time I've ever been seasick. Those were really rocky seas, but not as rocky as the Drake Passage. So Ms. Evans, we understand. It's okay.
Yeah. She by the way was not alone. There were many, many people on the boat.
I believe it.
Yeah, who were having real trouble. There were not many like me who were sort of like, yeah, I was perfectly fine. The second day that we were on the Drake, it was not bad at all. You're right. There's sort of a section of the Drake Passage that extends around the bottom of the planet. And once you get through that, and that's the really rough part. Once you get through that, it's not nearly as bad. So the second day, on our trip down to Antarctica, the waves were much lower, and she was pretty good. And then on our way back, we were then 5 days in Antarctica, going to a whole bunch of different things along the Antarctic Peninsula. And then we were 2 days coming back. And the first of those days, again, wasn't quite as rough, and she was good. The second one was lesser. We had I was told it was like 6 to 10 foot swells, and Kathy was fine. Everyone I knew who had suffered on the way down there was pretty good. I will say this about the Drake, as awful as it may have been for the 24 hours or so that she and the other people were enduring it, I heard no one say, "Oh wow, I'm never coming back. Oh my gosh, it wasn't worth it." Everyone sort of said, "Yeah, it was bad, but it was worth it," because being down there is so incredible that you sort of immediately forget that you were retching in the toilet just a few hours ago.
Yeah, it's for lack of a better word, it's a rite of passage to get down there, right? You some people have to go through it to have that pain to get the glory. So that's really cool. And then talk about some of the wildlife down there. I know you said you saw a bunch of penguins. There's some other ones, obviously that no one ever sees because very few people get to Antarctica.
Yeah.
What are some of those cool animals that you're like, man, you can only find this down here on the forbidden tundra that is Antarctica?
Exactly. So the first thing, let me go back to the penguins really quick, because one of the really cool things that I did not know about penguins. Donald, have you ever heard of Penguin Highway?
Yes.
Oh,
I've heard
so okay. Highway. Better educated.
I learned about it in Australia. So go ahead. Tell the people.
Okay. I did not know that there are penguin highways. The way, these penguins are living in the midst of, very thick ice and a good bit of snow, and they need a path sort of through the ice and snow to get to the water, because they put their nests sort of way high because they don't want it to be covered by snow and things like that. And so what they do is they start walking in a line, and no way to say this other than this, they take poops, they dump, there's guano on the ground, and when they do that, as they walk in this line, it melts the ice and it creates like little lanes in the ice for them to wander down. That is the Penguin Highway. And, anytime you have a penguin colony, there'll be highways from like one colony to another, from the colony to the ocean, from the colony to another place. And as we were walking around and wandering, you had to be real careful if you got close to a penguin highway, which we did often, because you have to look around. If there are penguins coming, you have to wait, let them go, because you don't want to get in their way. They get very confused. Like when they see humans, they don't think anything of us if we're not in their way, but get it, because they know we're not going to hurt them, and they know we're not food. If you're not going to hurt them and you're not food, you don't matter. Mm-hmm. But if you get in their way, they're like, wait, what do I do now? And let me tell you, you don't want a penguin going down the highway having to take a detour. He doesn't know where he's going then. He's like, whoa, I'm off the highway. I'm off-roading it. And they don't
have penguin maps.
They don't have penguin maps. They do not. So the penguins were amazing. And by the way, perhaps the coolest thing they did was when they got in the water. It's called porpoising, where they're jumping out of the water. Yep. Donald, I got a picture. There was a school of penguins. I guess they're called a school. I don't know, a flock, whatever they're called. There was a group of penguins, about 15 or 20 of them, who were porpoising right toward the Zodiac that we were riding in. And I had my zoom lens on my camera, and I took a shot. Donald, I'm going to tell you that I'm not a great photographer, but National Geographic's going to be giving me a call, my friend. I got a picture that is so good of these penguins porpoising. It is incredible, remarkably clear. They are out of the water. I was like, how did I get that picture? So the penguins they're just too much. The other thing, there are two other things that are really cool. One is the seals, especially the leopard seals. Leopard seals are big and they are scary looking. If you have ever seen the teeth of a leopard seal, you know why that sucker has no predators down there. Occasionally, I've been told a killer whale will show up and the leopard seal will have a competitor. But other than that,
they actually have a specific species, or I guess sect, of killer whales that orcas that learn how to get their prey in a special way because of the seals that are on the ice. They learn how to flood them off of the ice so that they can grab them, because that's not something that they have to worry about in other parts of the world.
Yeah. So the leopard seals and the other seals were really cute and yet also really dangerous and interesting. And then down the whales. I've been on whale watching trips before. I've done it in Alaska. I did it once in Galapagos, and I most assuredly went whale watching when I was in Iceland back in August. But I've never seen this many whales in one place. We wouldn't even be specifically whale watching. We'd just sort of be out in our Zodiac on our way to some penguins or our way to see something else, and suddenly we'd be like, "Oh, look, there's a mommy!" And by the way, it's the right time of year because it's all mommies and babies. Oh, look, there's a mommy and her baby hunchback, and she's teaching him how to do this or do that. We would just run into them like almost every day, just at random, and it was just so incredible and so beautiful. um, you don't realize how small you are until you've seen a baby humpback whale, and you're like, "Oh, that's a baby," because he's huge.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So the other thing I had was the weather down there. I know obviously
Yeah.
it can get very cold in Antarctica. Was it super cold down there? And also, did you take the plunge? I know some people jump into the water. Did you do that as well?
So it was not as cold as you would think. The cruise line Seabourn, I cannot recommend them more highly, by the way. If you're thinking about this is a luxury cruise line. This is not an inexpensive trip. But if you can afford it, do it. Do it. And Seabourn is a great way to do it. It was an amazing, amazing ship. They provided us with parkas. They were sort of, it's like a double parka. It was both like a liner that can be worn separately and then a waterproof parka on the outside. And we were perfectly fine the whole time. I would say the temperature got, maybe down to 28 or so. For the most part, it was right around 30 degrees. I'm not saying that's not cold. Absolutely, that's cold. But we didn't feel cold at any time. And in fact, I often was unzipping my parka, unzipping my jacket because I was a little warm and I wanted to get a little bit of air. It was cold on your face a lot and your ears. If you don't wear a beanie or a hat or something, your ears are getting very cold, my friend. But the weather wasn't that bad, and we had very little rain, some snow flurries here and there, but it was really nice weather. As for the polar plunge, damn straight I did it. Yes, I did. I was told that the water temperature, now the water is obviously salt water. Salt water has a freezing temperature lower than regular water, the kind of water that we have around here. So I was told that the water temperature was about 30 degrees, 29 or 30, something like that, right in that ballpark. And yeah, I went ahead and I jumped in, and it was really, really cold. I was not wearing a wetsuit or anything. I was just wearing a regular bathing suit. They did tie a rope around me, like they had a special belt attached to a rope. And I was told the reason they did that was because it doesn't happen very often, Donald, but occasionally someone hits the water and instantly goes into cardiac arrest.
Uh-huh.
And that way they can pull you in if you happen to pass out or something like that from hitting the cold water. I did not. I went into the water. It was very salty. It was very cold. I got out immediately, but I'm glad I did it. It was a lot of fun. And they had some Don Julio tequila that we were able to take one shot before you went in and two shots after you came out. Don Julio got me warm very, very quickly.
I was about to say the alcohol on trips on boats like that are always fun, even after also like a rocky cruise like that, going through Drake Passage. They do say that alcohol helps kind of stabilize you, but I don't know if the Drake Passage, if that was
dude,
a conquering hero.
No one who's suffering through the Drake is like, you know what I need right now? 3 or 4 drinks.
Yeah.
That's not happening. Not happening.
Well, that's cool, man. I mean, anything else about the trip you want to share with everybody? I'm sure there's tons, but tell us what's going on.
I mean, I don't know. I think I probably need to go to the Duke Basketball Report forums. I know that, it's sort of interesting to me. We're the DBR podcast. We grew up out of the Duke Basketball Report website. And yet there are a fair number of people who listen. I'm convinced there are a pretty fair number of people who listen to this podcast who haven't visited the Duke Basketball Report to sort of know where we come from. But we talk about the forums all the time. And I think I need to go to the forums and post some of my pictures so people can see them, because even though pictures don't even begin to tell the story, but it's magical. It's beautiful. Like, Donald, there's no sunset. I have to post the picture of Kathy and I standing on the bow of our ship at midnight in Antarctica. And it looks like the sun is just like hovering at the back of the horizon. What happens as you approach midnight at this time of year? This is the middle of summer. Remember that their summer, our summer's their winter, and vice versa. The sun sort of lowers in the sky. It sort of gets right to the horizon, and then it just hovers there, believe it or not, for about 2 or 3 hours, and then it starts coming back up again. And we took a picture at midnight that is just stunning. The colors, the oranges, and how the way they reflect off all the glaciers and icebergs that are around us. Really, really beautiful stuff. I can't recommend this highly enough, Donald. It's an amazing experience that everyone needs to have at some point in their life, if they can tolerate going through the Drake.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you and Mrs. Evans were able to do that. One final question: how's Cameron? Yeah, I know Cameron missed you.
Yes, he did miss me. He was very excited. I got back and he was in the bedroom with my mom, and we, the nature of when you fly back and forth. We arrived at 5 a.m. yesterday morning. That's when our plane landed here in Atlanta, and take a little while to clear customs and such. But I got back to the house at about 6 or so, and Cameron was in the bedroom. He's old now. He's 13 and a half. He didn't hear me coming in, and so I got to kind of wake him up. But he was so excited when he saw me. He jumped up and he was licking my face and stuff like that. He definitely missed me for a couple of weeks, and I missed my guy as well. So yeah,
that's good. Well, I'm glad you're back stateside, but glad you had an incredible trip. Again, he's going to post about it somewhere, probably in the DBR forums in full. You can ask him more questions about that. Or if you have questions for Jason about Antarctica and what kind of penguins are out there, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. You can email those to Jason. All right, let's take a quick break. We will talk about some basketball on the other side. We're going to talk about
what's
the national
that? What
champion.
the heck? Basketball? Huh?
Basketball. Yeah, you missed that. Yeah, you missed the whole week and a half of basketball. But basketball carried on, and as the national championship comes closer, we're going to talk about some stats and what Duke needs to do to move into the upper echelon of teams that can be considered competitors. We'll be right back.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
All right, we are back. And Jason, I want to talk quickly about some stats that I was looking at the other day on KenPom. Of course, KenPom has been raging on while you were down south. But the interesting thing is we're now starting to talk about the NCAA tournament. A lot of people are starting to talk about bids. I think you may have had a chance to listen to it already. I'm not sure yet. But just yesterday with JJ Jackson, we talked a little bit about the ACC and how it's being marked for the NCAA tournament, maybe having 2 teams, but really Bart Torvik and some of the metrics saying that it might be, at least it should be, more teams that are considered, in the running for the NCAA tournament.
Right, I saw that, yeah.
I was looking earlier at the KenPom rankings for all of the national champions since they started back in 1998, 1999. And I was comparing that to what Duke is at right now. So I just want to, first of all, talk about Duke right now. In the KenPom rankings, as of today, they are 12th in the rankings. They are 10th on offense and 34th on defense. Now, the thing about every national champion again since 1999. The only champion that has been worse than the top 20 on offense was UConn in 2014. UConn in 2014 was what 15th? No, I'm sorry, they were 39th. So there it was an aberration. Everyone else is basically 19 or lower. In fact, that number 19 was UConn in 2011. Note the trend here. UConn had some very terrible teams that won a national championship. Luck happens. But the other thing is the only champion that has been worse than the top 20 on defense was Baylor back in 2021. Only 2 champions overall have been 10th or lower in the overall KenPom rankings at the end of the season. Of course, those are the 2 UConn teams, 2010 and 2014. Now, when we look at Duke has made the Final Four in 99, 2001, 2004, 2010, 2015, and 2022. Of course, they won the championship in 01, 10, and 15. Each time Duke made the Final Four, they were in the top 10 overall on KenPom. 2022 was really the anomaly. They were the only team that had a rating under 11 on defense. They were 49th on defense, which would have, if we had gone through and won that championship, that would have been one of the big anomalies in this rating system. But I look at Duke's offense, and Duke's offense in these Final 4 years: 1, 2, 2, 1, 3, 1. Very, very high efficiency on offense, and also on defense, very, very high. We were in all those years 3rd, 5th, 11th, and 49th. Now, again, we look at Duke now. Duke is 10th on offense. They're 34th on defense. They're 12th overall in the rankings. While we look at this team and we've seen how they've progressed throughout the year, I know we were talking at the beginning of the season about how we think the offense is going to outpace the defense. And so far, that has been true. And the defense has been very good. We talked about the game just the other night against Virginia Tech, where their defense was, I thought, incredible. And we've had some incredible defensive outputs, but we've also had some ones that have been very, very shaky. And I think the one thing that needs to be more consistently on the rise as we move forward has got to be our defense. And again, we're entering a part of the schedule where we already had a tough road game on Monday. We're obviously going to talk a lot tomorrow about the big road game that's ahead of us in Chapel Hill on Saturday. We have some big time games coming up where we're going to have teams that are going to test us defensively. And I think Duke needs to figure out how to hone in and make sure that whatever happened on Monday, stopping people with a perimeter, really being a team that can rebound. We're going to run into some teams that can rebound, and we need to be able to counter that. We also need to be able to defend on the perimeter. If that ranking can go up into the 25, 30 range, I think I looked at the stats game, and we all have Sam, you and I have our KenPom ranking. We predicted it'd be in the teens, right? 15, 16, 11. If we can get to the low 20s, I think during the NCAA tournament, we'll be in the postseason, we'll be in a great position to really raise that level up to a point where it looks like we can make a run at this thing. But of course, it's going to take a lot of luck. It's going to take some health. I know we've got some guys that have been out recently, get them back to 100%. But it was interesting to look at those numbers, because I think when you look at how everything has transpired over the last 20 or so years, defense has been a part of that. And our defense has it's been there sometimes, but it's the one thing that really needs to be consistent as we move along.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that the defense has been, the issue to some extent for this Duke team, as they've struggled a bit. I want to take you back to Tuesday, January 9th, when Duke played Pittsburgh. The first time we played Pitt, and we beat them very, very soundly. On that day, Duke beat Pittsburgh by a score of 75-53. Pitt only scored 53 points against Duke. And if you looked at the Duke schedule up until that moment, we had only given up 80 points in one game, the game we lost to Arkansas, which was just terrible, just awful. But that's the only game where Duke had given up 80 points. And really, for the most part, like, teams rarely scored. Like, Arizona scored 78, Georgia Tech scored 72. But for the most part, like, Baylor got 70. Teams weren't even getting above 70 points against this Duke squad up to that game on Tuesday, January 9th against Pittsburgh. And after that game, I went and I looked at the old KenPom archives, After that game, Duke was the number 13 team in Ken Pomeroy in terms of defensive efficiency. You tell me Duke's going to be number 13 in defensive efficiency, I'm going to tell you that Duke's going to be a team that definitely has a great chance to cut down the nets. Donald, you know where we are today in defensive efficiency. Right now, we're number 34. It hasn't been that long since that Pitt game. You know?
It's only been a couple weeks.
Yeah. Since January 9th, we've gone from 13th to 34th. We have really struggled. And you can tell by the scores. Georgia Tech scored 89 points on us. Scored 79. Pitt scored 80. Louisville scored 69. Clemson scored 71. Virginia Tech scored 67. This Duke team was holding teams in the 60s consistently prior to that game. And lately there's been just a fall off. Now, look, part of it is, I think you cannot overstate how much this team's been impacted by injuries. We missed Tyrese Proctor for a while. We missed Mark Mitchell for a little while. Jeremy Roach, just like last year. Remember, Jeremy Roach got hurt last year, and it felt like he never really got back to what he was. Man, would I love to get the Jeremy Roach back that we had a few weeks ago before he got hurt. And I think one of the things that people miss is defense is something that comes from playing together. You have to be together to be able to be effective on defense. And when you've got guys who are injured and who aren't practicing, it sets everything behind. And I think that's part of the reason why this Duke team has maybe struggled a little bit more than people, expect. And it's why this team needs to really focus on defense to get to where they need to be. I mean, look, the Virginia Tech beating them the way we did and them only scoring 67 points. That's pretty nice. That's pretty good. This contest against North Carolina coming up is going to be a huge one because the Tar Heels, we're not getting to the full preview here. we're not going to do the preview. We're saving that. But the Tar Heels are a good offensive team. They're actually a better defensive team than they are offensive team. And I'm going to get into that when we do the preview. But they're a good offensive team. They're a team that plays fast, very fast, especially on offense. They play super fast. And they're a club that scores 80, 90 points all the time. They've scored over 100 points 3 times this year. And Duke's going to need to find a way to hold North Carolina down a little bit. We cannot let them get easy points against us. Our defense has to be better than it has been lately.
So it's funny you mentioned UNC very quickly. You talk about how that game, they've been averaging 80, 90 points a game. Last year, if you remember, the 2 games that we had, we won 63-57 and then 62-57. They were very low scoring games. In fact, some of the lowest scoring games in the history of the series. And it was about the defense. It was about honing in on that defense. Of course, the defense last year had a very different look than it does this year for Duke. I think I will continue to hype on what you said about the injuries. The injuries is not always just the fact that these guys are out, is that we have inconsistent starting lineups as a result, right? Yeah. We haven't had one of the stat game categories was, okay, we're going to have the 4 returning guys, and then who's going to start with them? And you said it's probably just going to be Jarrett McCain all year long, right?
I was right, baby. Jarrett McCain's never coming out of the starting lineup.
We have a sample size of we have a sample size of 4 because there's only been 4 or 5 lineups where the 4, guys who return started, and then Jarrett McCain had an opportunity to start alongside him. We've had, even when Tyrese Proctor came back, right? He came back, and for several games, he was still on the bench. Jeremy Roach, still on the bench after coming back from injury. Mark Mitchell has left the lineup and come back. Guys are going in and out, and that also affects the continuity of a defense because, again, Jason, is one thing, right? If we start this podcast and I say hello and I kick it to you, I know you're there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's because we have several hundred episodes of doing that. When I look over and it's somebody else, or if I'm on defense and I look over at somebody else, you have to get to know that person, right? You have to kind of look over and be like, okay, what's this guy going to do? And on defense, it's incredibly important to know where your teammates are.
Hey, wait, are you saying that Scott Rich and JJ Jackson are not good teammates?
No, they are terrific teammates.
Those guys were,
shout them out in a minute.
Those guys were awesome. I've listened to all the podcasts when I was away. About going back to being in Antarctica. I had some internet, a little bit, not enough to really watch Duke games. There was nothing I could stream. I was able to listen though. And by the way, I couldn't even get the DBR podcast. I couldn't get it to download, but I was able to read some stuff. I could send some emails. And when I got back to Buenos Aires before I flew home, I downloaded every DBR podcast episode, and my plane trip was basically me listening to you and JJ and Scott. They did a fabulous job, and Sam, of course. But I knew Sam would be great. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, but the point is this, right? Just to put a bow on the Duke defense, right? When you have guys that you don't are in the lineup every night and they're not the same person, you have to learn how to play alongside those guys. And this team is still doing that because once you feel like you got it right, they have another test in the form of someone else who's starting alongside him, right? Jared McCain is like the one guy who it feels like he's in the starting lineup all the time, right? I think he's maybe the one guy that started just about every game. Flip has started every game. But other than that, when Flip looks over, he sees sometimes Ryan Young, sometimes he sees Mark Mitchell, sometimes he sees Jalen Blakes. Like, there's a lot of guys on here that have to figure out how to play together. And once you get that down, I think that's going to go up. But we're reaching that part of the season where it needs to go up. The defensive part is coming. We can't slack. We have, we haven't faced UNC. We're going to face them twice. We haven't seen UVA yet. We haven't seen Miami yet. We're gonna see Louisville again, and they're gonna come to Cameron. They're gonna want, and everyone who comes to Cameron wants to try and beat us. There's some teams that we need to be able to take care of defensively, and that is going to be the key to seeing if this team is an elite team that can contend for a national championship versus the team who is going to, be in the NCAA tournament but not really do much. So, with that, I think that's it, Jason. For now, we have obviously more coming this week with the UNC game coming up on Saturday. We are going to have a full-length preview. Look for your feeds probably on Thursday, late Thursday, Friday. We will have a full preview for the UNC game at that point. But again, I want to personally thank Sam Klein, JJ Jackson, Scott Rich for being on the show in Jason's absence. They have been tremendous teammates, and it was great to have all of them on this show to carry the weight that Jason left when he went down to look at Penguins. But we're glad to have Jason back. He's back now. He's back for the big one. And tomorrow, remember, look for your feeds for the UNC game. This will do it for DBR Bites, episode number 32. He's Jason. I'm Donald. And now you are here in the Duke Band. It's time for them to play us out and take us home.